Alright, this video is to help you understand more about the teaching the prosody of Canadian English, and I'm using prosody or prosody interchangeably sometimes with suprasegmentals. I kind of prefer the term because it reminds me of music and the music of the language, but suprasegmentals also refers to anything over the level of the segment, which would be the consonants and the vowels. So prosody in linguistics refers to the study of the rhythm, intonation, stress, and their interconnections within a language. The term suprasegmentals is used in most of the Canadian ESL and TESOL textbooks, but both terms can be used interchangeably. And prosody is considered a more open term, including the way nonverbal communication cues impact with the pronunciation suprasegmentals. So if I'm saying something in a positive tone, that's wonderful, my facial expression and nonverbal expressions will match that, and that can be included in the teaching. So let's revisit the core pronunciation concepts that I always include in every course that I teach. And as I mentioned before, I try to overview the students in the way that a job interviewer might interpret their pronunciation and their presentation of themselves. So the first thing when you walk into an interview and greet somebody that will be noticed is the overall affect. Your clothing and accoutrements. Accoutrements refers to your jewelry, your hairband, all of those things that you might have on your person. Facial expression, tone of voice, and the materials you're carrying with you. Body language is noticed next. Your oculesics, your posture, your handshake, your gesture, your head nods and tilts. And then suprasegmentals, as you start to speak, are noticed very quickly. Your phrasing and thought groups, your intonation curves, the main syllable stress, whether your content words stand out from your function words, reductions, and linking. And all of this is not at a conscious level. When somebody's listening to you, they don't understand that they are analyzing these items. And then finally, the vowels and consonants will contribute to whether or not you're actually understood and are absolutely crucial as well. So we can look at the suprasegmentals as the architecture of the language. It refers to anything above the level of the individual sound, so it therefore includes, in most people's books, there's always a lot of different use of terminology in ESL and TESOL, but they include linking between words, syllable stress within a multisyllable word, phrasal stress, sentence stress, intonation, rhythm, and discourse pronunciation. For example, linking from a consonant to a vowel in the phrase, I'll be in a minute, I'll be in a minute, I'll be in a minute. You can notice there that there's linking between the words be in and inna. I'll be in a minute. I'll be in a minute. Sorry, there's linking between the be and the in and the in, and the in and the ah. And in B, differentiating between the noun record and the verb record. That requires suprasegmentals. And C, emphasizing only the content words in the phrase she'll be home at 6. Home and 6 are emphasized. And putting more emphasis on either final content word or the word providing key information. Am I saying she'll be home at 6 or she'll be home at 6? So there's some key questions that I think we have to grapple with as teachers of English as a second language when we start to approach the prosody. And they are, what is the connection between the use of prosody and ensuring that messages are received by listeners as intended? Is this some kind of icing on the cake that we can leave till later, or is it actually something crucial to every single utterance that we make? Obviously, my thinking is that it's something absolutely crucial, that you will quickly interpret whether I'm being sarcastic or friendly or inviting when I make a statement to you, and so the prosody becomes crucial in our relationship. Number 2, how can working with language functions, praising, complaining, advising, help to highlight the importance of prosody? Again, I think absolutely necessary to make sure that students are able to do what they need to do, and so language functions are absolutely crucial to teaching pronunciation successfully and communicating successfully. And then how can we help learners quickly grasp 4 common intonation patterns? The high rise, used in yes-no questions. Is this yours? The low rise, which you've heard me using all through these videos, which is used on friendly speech, and we'll talk about these more in a moment. The rise fall, where I've gone up and gone down, indicating that I'm finished saying something. And the fall when I'm being sarcastic. How can we help people learn to produce these and to apply them? When I started to be really interested in how people can attain speech patterns in a new language, I looked at the research on mimicry. And mimicry has been studied for quite a while in terms of liking between social partners. And this one study found mimicry actually increases liking between interaction partners and serves as a social glue, as it's one way to appear similar to others and therefore create a psychological connection. So on the one hand, we want people to change and to sound more similar to the person doing the job interview. And we've all been told that for years. When you go into an interview, look at the pacing and the style of the other person, imitate them a bit so they'll feel a bit of bonding at the beginning. But we are in a linguistically, generationally, and culturally diverse situation in Canada, and that means who's going to be imitating who and what are the power dynamics there, etc. I encourage you to watch my intercultural communication presentation as well to understand a little bit more about this, but it gave me quite a bit of unease. And at the same time, I do absolutely realize that when someone sounds similar to you at the beginning, you feel a little bit of a relief and more ease in beginning the relationship. I've been teaching pronunciation for more than 2 decades now, and I had a very successful one-on-one pronunciation business in the Greater Toronto area, where I'd work with individuals for 10 or 14 hours, and afterwards they would be amazed, and their bosses, who often paid for the training, would also be amazed and say, wow, this person has really improved their communication. So it was really gratifying. But there were also times when someone was forced to take the classes by their business and really wasn't comfortable about the changes that they needed to make. And I started to ask myself, what are the ethics, what are the emotions involved, and what are the negotiation issues in asking someone to change the way that they're speaking? So is it ethical to ask someone to change their prosody? I think it's not ethical to ask someone to change. I think that it's totally ethical to explain to someone what typically occurs in a language, to provide examples of how I've successfully used that language and said things, to have them practice repetitions and to become able to make the new way of speaking, but to actually demand or insist that there's a right way or wrong way of speaking and that people need to change. I draw a line there, and you need to ask yourself as you begin teaching more pronunciation or continue, are you forcing people to change because you believe there's a correct way of doing it or that it's for their best, or are you giving them opportunities? I think it's all in the way that we frame it. What does it really involve? For some people, it involves questions about identity. It involves questions of power, and it involves questions of renegotiating themselves in order to be successful in a new enterprise. And you might be saying to yourself, well, if people come to a new culture and a new language, they're going to have to expect to do those things. But if you think about the way we have in the past tried to force people to make changes to the way that they speak, I think of the First Nations people in Canada and many other colonized countries through the years. I think that you need to recognize there's a lot going on in what we're doing here in pronunciation teaching. It involves a lot of emotional, mental, and physical work, and sometimes questioning. And I think that when that's on the table, it becomes a much more fascinating enterprise, but also one that's fraught with negotiation. Let's work through an example. You speak the way that you normally speak, but I'm going to ask you to speak like me now. I'm going to say a phrase referring to a tour through a park 7 times, and I want you to imitate me and say it exactly the same 7 times afterwards without any change whatsoever. And just see that you're going to have to change the way that you would normally say it in order to copy me. Here we go. That was totally amazing. 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 All right, so you can notice that when I'm the model for my students, I'm asking them to speak like me, and that even asking you to speak like me in this example means changing the way that you normally present yourself to the world. So a big thing for me in the teaching of prosody and the teaching of pronunciation in general is that I'm describing what happens in a language. I'm not prescribing. so that all of my lessons I'll use terminology sense as, well, this is what has worked for me in saying a sentence like this. This is the way I hear native speakers of English typically say a sentence like this. I'm going to model for you how I say this sentence, but I never, and I hope I never, I don't think I've caught myself in many, many years say things like, this is the right way to say it, this is the correct way to say it, this is the way it is said. So I hope you can keep that in mind as you're providing a model for your learners and thinking about what it means to teach pronunciation.